Welcome to another episode of the Stitch Sessions. It's a new month. We're into April and the first Wednesday of every month. You know what that means. We dive into our next installment in our crochet series for this year, which is Shall We Crochet. And every month we take on a new shawl project and discover different shapes and how to create these shapes to create your shawls. So for the month of April, we are going to work on this really pretty, dainty little semicircle shawlette. And I call it the Slice of Heaven Shawlette because it just feels so divine. It's really lightweight. We're using the mesh stitch pretty much throughout the whole thing, as well as some lacy shell stitches. So it may look daunting to you, but as long as you know your double crochet and your chain stitches, you are good to go. And of course, as you can see, this shawl shape is a semicircle. So for those of you that have just started learning how to create circles in your crochet skill set, this one is going to take you through how to work the semicircle, which has a lot of the same principles of how you would create a circle. The challenging thing is always how to create that straight edge along the bottom or the top, however which way you look at it. And so I take you through that step by step in this tutorial. Of course, you can make it much longer and larger if you like. I just basically used up some leftover lightweight yarn I had, and this is pretty much the length I got, and I really like it. It's perfect for a springtime outfit. You can wear with just about anything to elevate whatever outfit you might have on. So let's check out the materials we're going to need to create our Slice of Heaven semicircle shawlette. Okay, so to make our semicircle shawl, these are the materials you're going to need. Okay, I am using a super fine weight yarn. So I'm using a bunch of leftovers actually, which I'm very excited about because sometimes you get these types of leftovers and it's a yarn you don't use all the time. This is, it's a wrap yarn. It's a 50% cotton and 50% acrylic. It comes in a 200-gram cake. Now I have used a third of this, okay? So I've got 2/3 left, plus some left over from another project. So, but definitely this is meant to do a shawl. So if you bought the full cake, you should be okay. And it's considered a super fine weight 1, and they are recommending a 3.25 millimeter hook. But I'm gonna be using a 4 millimeter hook, which is also known as a G or a size 6, okay? I just want my stitches to sit a little bit looser. And also, in case you're wondering about this particular colorway, it's called Western Occidental. And it's got like, kind of like a mocha, cream, and gray color in it. And this is like a creamy white. And as always, make sure you have a pair of scissors and a darning needle on hand to sew in all of your ends, okay? So we're gonna get started. Now, just to kind of show you guys, I had done up a swatch because semicircles are quite interesting to work on. They seem pretty straightforward, but they can get pretty funky on the ends here. So I actually ended up doing a little extra row there, so that's why it's a little bit crooked. But I finally figured out kind of the general pattern. So that's just going to give us a nice little guide to go on. And it's always great. I know doing swatches can be a time-consuming pain in the butt, but hey, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to take all that away from you having to do it. So from here, what we're doing is we're starting from the center as if we're going to do a circle, but we're only going to do halfway there. And then we're going to work back and forth, and turn our work. Okay, so I'm going to get you started on that. Okay, so we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook. And then we're going to proceed to chain 3. Now, if you are a tight crocheter, I would probably recommend chaining 4. Okay, so you've got a chain of 3 just like that. Then you're going to go back into your very first chain and you're just going to slip stitch to join your chain into a little circle. So it's going to be pretty tight, just like that. Okay. From here, we are going to then chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Your chain 4 will count as a double crochet chain 1. Okay, then what we're going to do is into the center of that little ring that we created, we are going to place a double crochet. Now be careful you don't go into there because that's where we slip stitched. So you're going to have to just stretch it out a little bit and go into the center of your circle. And that's why I said if you're a tight crocheter, you might want to chain 4 to make it a little bit easier to see. So there's the center of my circle. I'm pulling up a loop and I'm going to create my first double crochet. Okay, so there you go. So it looks like a bit of a V-stitch. Now what I'm going to do is I will chain 1 and go back inside that circle again and place another double crochet. Pull through 2 and pull through 2. So now I've got these 2 V spaces, so to speak. So I'm going to chain 1 again and place another double crochet. So in total, I want to have essentially 5 double crochet slices, so to speak, right? So right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I need to chain 1 and I need to do 1 more. So sorry, that's going to give you 4 slices. I like to call them slices. But in essence, you're going to have 5 double crochet stitches. Okay? So the chain 1 is what creates the separation. See that? So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 spaces, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 posts. Okay? Nice and easy. So you've now created the beginning of your semicircle. And don't worry about this little bump out. It'll all even out as we go along. So that is row 1. Now for row 2, what you're going to do is you're going to chain up 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to turn your work and right into the base of that, see that right there? We're going to double crochet back into that same space. Just like that. Okay, so you've got your V stitch situation happening there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1 and then find the very next stitch, which is that double crochet, and we're going to place a V stitch into that one. So that means we're going to insert our hook and place a double crochet. We're going to chain 1 and then place another double crochet right back into that same stitch. Okay, so your work looks something like that. And then you're going to chain 1 and go into the next stitch right there. So we're going into the top of the post stitches. You're going to insert your hook and place another V stitch. So that is a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Okay, you're going to do that all the way to the end. So we chain 1 again, insert into the next post stitch. Whoops. Chain 1, double crochet. Okay, so you can see that it's really fanning out now. And then we've got our last one here. Now remember, this was the chain 4. So we need to find the top of the 3rd chain. 1, 2, and 3. And that is, whoops, make sure you chain 1. And that is where we are going to insert our last V stitch. Because remember, one of those chains counts as a chain 1 space. So we chain 1 and insert. So all of our double crochets are separated by a chain 1, whether or not you're creating the V or in between the V. Okay, so let me just take that out so you guys can see there. So now you can really see the circular shape taking form. And the first couple of rows always feel a bit weird because they're just starting to form and it feels a little bit wonky. But as we go along, it will all come into play. Okay, let's move on to row 3. We are going to chain 4 as we did before. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Turn your work. And then right back into the base of that chain 4, you're going to insert your hook and place a double crochet. So you've done this before. Okay. And then what we're going to do is into the very next stitch, so that's the next post in the V-stitch of the previous row, we are just going to place 1 double crochet into that stitch. Okay. Then we move on to the next stitch here, which is a bit stretched out because I had worked out some kinks there. We are going to place a V-stitch. So that is where we're going to place 1 double crochet, 1 chain, and 1 V-stitch. Sorry, and 1 double crochet. So right now we've got a V-stitch, a double crochet, and a V-stitch. And that's the alternating pattern we're going to do for row 3. So into the next stitch, which is right here, so we're working into the tops of the double crochets. We're ignoring any chain 1. We're going to just place 1 double crochet. Okay, and then again we go into the next stitch and we place a V-stitch. So it's V-stitch, double crochet, V-stitch, double crochet. And you're going to do that alternatively all the way to the end, and your last stitch should be a single or an individual double crochet stitch. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you at the end of round 3. Okay, so to begin row 4, we're going to chain 4, 2, 3, 4. We're going to turn our work. And now we're going to create a lacy shell. So we know that a granny shell consists of 3 double crochets into the same stitch. But what we're going to do here is between each double crochet, we're going to have a chain 1. So again, that's why we chained 4. It's going to count as a double crochet, chain 1. Now we're going to go back into that same stitch and place a double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet stitch. Okay, just like that. And that's your lacy shell. That's what I call lacy shell. Now we're going to go back to chaining 1 in between our stitches. So we chain 1, and we're going to skip this V-stitch here from row 3, and we're going to go right into that individual double crochet, and we're going to do the same thing. We are going to create a lacy shell. So that's double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet back into that same stitch. Okay, so now you've got 2 lacy shells. Okay, then we chain 1 and repeat. We skip the V-stitch, we find the individual double crochet that's standing on its own, and into that stitch we place a lacy shell. So that is what we're going to do into every individual double crochet stitch from row 3. I've come to the end of row 4, so now I've got my 5 sets of fans, and so you would think that we would end up having 20 stitches in the next round because we keep increasing by 5. But even when we go into the last stitch, if I do another lacy shell, it's just going to start becoming too many stitches. So into the last one, I'm only going to do a V-stitch. So I'm going to place a double crochet, chain 1, and 1 more double crochet into that same stitch. So I'm not fully creating a lacy shell. I'm stopping short of 1. So always just gauge by placing your work down, and you can see as long as your base edge stays fairly straight, you're on the right track. And this is the funky thing about doing semicircles. It's so easy to just stick extremely strictly to your traditional formulation of a circle that sometimes one edge starts to creep down. So you really have got to watch for that. So at the end of row 4, I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 17 double crochet stitches. Now remember, we're not counting the chain ones in between. They do add in helping your work to sit, to fan out and sit nice and flat, okay? But we're just going by the motif that we're creating. All right, so let's take you on to row 5. And now for row 5, you're going to begin by chaining 4, 2, 3, 4. You're going to turn your work. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work into the spaces. So into that very first space, we're going to place 1 double crochet. And we're going to chain 1. Now into the large spaces between the motifs here, right, we're going to place a V-stitch. So we're going to insert 1 double, chain 1, and a double crochet. We will then chain 1, and now into each individual space of the shell, we're going to place 1 double crochet. Then chain 1 and 1 double crochet again. So everything is getting separated by a chain 1 to maintain that really nice lacy effect. So the next chain space is between the little patterns here. So we have a V stitch. So this is the bigger chain space. Chain 1 and V. Then we chain 1 and into the shell. I'm only going to do 1 double, chain 1, and then into the next 1 double, chain 1, and of course here's a bigger space, so we're going to do a V stitch. So that is how row 5 is looking. So you're going to do that all the way to the end. Keep repeating that pattern. Okay, so I have finished row 5. And I now have 22 stitches. So I had 17 in the previous row, and now I've got an additional 5. Now sometimes you're going to add 5, sometimes you're going to add 7 or 6, because again, our main goal is to make sure that our edges are nice and even. So from here on out, what I'm going to do is I'm only going to add an increase in every other round or row. I call them rounds because they're going around there. So I'm going to take you on to row number 6 and show you how we're just going to do a mesh stitch row of just basically 1 double crochet into each space. So we're going to start off by chaining 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to turn our work. And remember, the chain 4 counts as a double crochet and a chain 1. And I'm going to go immediately into this first space here, and I'm going to place a double crochet. Okay, and then I will chain 1 and go into the very next space available, which is right there. And that is what I'm going to do for this whole row, is just work into the spaces, including the V there. So I chain 1 and double crochet into the next space. Chain 1 and find the next space, which happens to be in the middle of the V, and double crochet. Chain 1 into the next space. So when we're working semicircles, this really helps to kind of just keep our work a little bit more even, to now only put increases in every second row or round. That does not include the ends though. So you always want to have 1 increase on the ends, because that's what helps your work stay nice and rounded like that. Okay, I just realized I have white on white. So go ahead and do that for round 6. Chain 1, 1 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet, working into every single space. So do that and I will meet you shortly. Okay, so this is the end of round 6. So you can see it's just 1 double crochet, chain 1 into each space. I've come to the end. I've done a double crochet into my last space, but to even out our side here, I am going to chain 1, and I always want to work into the top of the 3rd chain here. So that keeps my edge fairly consistent. Sometimes it just requires you to kind of pull this up a little bit. And just help it through. Okay, so in essence, I'm going to end up having 23 double crochets because I just had an additional one at the end, and that helps our work to stay nice and even like that. Okay, so now we're going on to round 7, which is an increase round or row. What I try to be cognizant of is to try not to land all of my increases in the same spot, because that's when you start getting that pointed look, and we want to keep our edge nice and round. So we can see here we had our increases there. So I want to make sure when I turn my work, I don't want my increases to land in the same spot. So in this case, I was doing an increase for every 3rd stitch. So I had 2 on their own, and then I increased in the 3rd, 2 on their own, increased on the 3rd. In the next round, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 3 on their own and increase in the next. So we're going to go on to round 7, and this will pretty much be the way you're going to create the rest of the shawl, is just alternating between increasing and non-increasing rows. And then it's going to be up to you where you place those increases, as long as you follow the principles of how to crochet a circle and knowing how often to place an increase. So we're going to chain 4 again. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to turn your work. And so we're going to start right away with placing an increase. So that means we're going to go into that very first stitch here. Just like that. And double crocheting. Okay. Now I want to do 3 individual double crochet stitches. So remember, we're going to chain 1. And then we're going to continue actually to work into the spaces from now on. So we're going to go into the first space here. So we have 1, chain 1, 2, chain 1, 3, chain 1, and now we're ready for an increase. So if we go down here, we saw that we had an increase here, and we are going to place one right here. So that's perfect. It's not landing on top of the previous increase. So we're going to go ahead and place a V-stitch in here. So we have 1, chain 1, and then another, double crochet. Okay. So again, that increase at the top helped keep the bottom straight. We've got an increase there. And now we are going to continue on. Chain 1, going into the next space, double crochet. Chain 1, into the next space, double crochet. So pretty straightforward. So how many have I done? I've done 2. I need 1 more. So I'm going to chain 1 and insert into the next space, double crochet. So now I need to do another increase, which will be our V-stitch here. So I will chain 1, find the next space, and place a V-stitch, which is going to be our increase here. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And again, I just kind of come down here. Perfect. So that increases there. This increases here. So it'll continue to keep a nice rounded shape. So go ahead and do that all the way to the end. You're going to do 3 and then a V, 3 and then the V, and I'll meet you at the end of round number 7. Okay, so I've just done this last increase here, and I've got a few spaces left. So I'm going to chain 1, place 1 double crochet, chain 1, place another double crochet in this space, and then I'm going to chain 1, and I always want to end at the top of the 3rd chain here, just to keep it nice and even. Okay, just like that. And actually, let me grab this here because it'll be a better contrast. So when I place my work down, I have a look and it's staying fairly consistent here. Okay, I now have 30 double crochet posts going across. So remember the previous round, we went up to 23 and now we're going up to 30. So now we've increased by 7. Okay, so that's what I mean. Like it's always going to kind of alternate back and forth because the semicircle is quite a unique shape to crochet. So there you can see that it's creating this really beautiful lacy effect. And this is how you're going to continue on. So if we were to go on to round 8, we would just begin the same way. You're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to turn your work, and now we're just going to place 1 double crochet into each space all the way around. So just like we did for row number 6, okay? So you're going to yarn over into the space, chain 1 into the next space. So you guys get the gist. Now, here's the thing. Again, I'm going to leave a little a reference to that video on how to crochet a circle, because from here on out, it's just basically important for you to understand the principles of creating a circle, because it's similar here. I'm not going to go through all of the rounds because it would just take days to do that. So what you want to do is every other row, you're going to place an increase. And I just always try to make sure that my increases do not land exactly on top of the previous row that I increase. So let's say this is row 8, maybe in row 9, my increase might fall again on the same spot, but it's further enough away that it's not going to cause that point. The other thing too is sometimes instead of a V-stitch, I might manipulate my count to actually use a lacy shell. So for example, when I finish row 8, I'm going on to row 9, I'm going to have to place some increases in row number 9. So I know that every 4th post, or after every 4 posts, I'm going to do an increase. So here I did 1, 2, 3 increase, 1, 2, 3 increase. So in the next one, I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4 and increase. What I might do is I would probably go 1, 2, 3 and then place a lacy shell, because remember, a shell has 3 posts in it. So that would count as the 4th single post plus an increase. So if that doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry. Just continue on with this basic pattern with regular increases. But once in a while, I will manipulate my count so that I can have some shells in there. Ultimately, you want to just make sure that your count stays consistent as you increase. And what I will do is I will put up a little screenshot of the number of stitches that I had after every round, okay? And in fact, I will also leave it in the description notes down below for you to reference. So for now, I am going to set you loose for several rounds. What I will do is I will check back in with you once I've done 30 rounds, just so you can see how the shape is and we can have kind of a little comparison of how you're doing. So I'm going to let you loose and I will see you back here in a little bit. Okay guys, so I have done 30 rows and you can see I've had a color change and I'm super happy with how it's coming out. So you can really see the lovely semicircular shape forming and my edges are staying nice and smooth. And that is, I attribute mostly to the fact that we are only increasing for every second row. And as you can see, my edge is staying fairly straight. So it's pretty straightforward. You're going to continue increasing in one row and just keeping the same stitch count in the other row. Now, when I say the same stitch count, you will notice when you're not increasing, you're still going to always have one extra stitch, and that's because we always stitch right back into the first space at the beginning. So even though it does increase by one stitch, I just call that a non-increase row. Also, what I did for a little bit of interest is every 4 or 6 rows, I actually added this lacy shell, and these were done in the rows where I did not increase. So all I did was I did a lacy shell in one space, and then I skipped the next 2 spaces because there's 3 posts in that shell, and that takes up the equivalent of 3 spaces. So you're not increasing, but you're just creating a little bit of extra detail. And for those of you that are a little bit beyond super beginner and you want to make something a little bit more interesting, you can do that to add some visual interest. Now, because the lacy shells take 3 posts, sometimes when you get to the end, you won't necessarily have 2 spaces left, for example. It doesn't matter. You just skip the one that you've got. You do your post in the last space, your last post in the last space, and your final post in the end there. So hopefully that all makes sense to you guys. It's really straightforward, and you can see how it's just forming nicely. So round 30 was a non-increase round. So in round 29, I was increasing into every 16th stitch. So that means I would do 15 regular stitches, and then into the 16th, I would do an increase, okay? And again, if you follow the principles of creating a circle, it is the same idea. I know I've said that a few times, but I just want to make sure that it makes sense because these semicircles can kind of throw you for a loop sometimes. So at this point, I am going to set you loose to create now the length or the diameter that you want for your shawl. And I am basically going to go until I finish my cake. Okay, so I've got that much there. So I know I've got quite a bit to go. And when I'm done, I will come back on and show you the final product. Okay, and so here is my Shawlette complete. I just love how lightweight and lacy and airy it is. And I did a total of 54 rows. So I basically used up all that lightweight yarn that I had. But then I had a little bit of this crochet thread in white, and I just felt like it needed a little bit of an anchoring color. So I added an additional 9 rows in the white just to kind of give it this nice colorway. So it starts with the white at the beginning and it ends with the white. So in total, I have 63 rows. Of course, you can make yours longer or shorter if you like. And there you have it. Again, we mostly just used the mesh stitch. And as you can see in some parts, I used a lacy shell stitch in the rows that I did not increase. And I discussed this previously as well. So if you want to add a little bit of extra detail, that lacy stitch is the great way to go because you don't have to worry about adding or decreasing any of your numbers of stitches. And I think it adds to how pretty it is and the way it drapes so lovely. I'm just really happy with how it came out. I hope you enjoyed working on it and found it pretty straightforward, and hopefully it's taken some of the mystique out of crocheting semicircles. I know it can be challenging sometimes. Now, if you have any questions or if something's still not quite clear, make sure to leave them for me in the comment box down below, or feel free to reach me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. And a few of you have sent me direct emails, and I love hearing from you guys. I am more than happy to help you out with any details that you need some further attention to. And if you like this video, you know what to do. Make sure to give it a thumbs up. That helps me know that you like this type of project. In fact, a lot of the shawl tutorials are getting quite a few thumbs up. So that tells me you guys like shawl projects. So that's good for me to know. And if you are new here and you enjoyed this episode, please consider pressing that subscribe button and come hang out with me. I upload a brand new video every Wednesday morning. So I look forward to having you join us for more crochet fun. Now, in the meantime, guys, I hope you have an amazing day. As always, take good care of yourselves and each other. And I look forward to seeing you guys in next week's session. Bye-bye.